Hello, welcome back to Crowswood Model Railway. This is the slightly late April layout update because I've been a little bit busy. I've got some new animals arriving the day after I'm recording this. And if people are interested in seeing them, because they're not all the scary ones, I can sort of show them because I'm trying to think of names for 3 of them. So I have a name for one of them because there's 4 in total that are coming. But back to the point at hand, which is the railway. And so there's been some updates. Most of them have been in terms of rolling stock because I've used this month of April to expand my collection of coaches. Because while I have a good few number of coaches, I don't have ones which I liked to run behind British Rail steam, and I wanted the Southern Livery Era 3 compartment coaches, like the Suburban stock, which is what B473 has behind her right now. I slowly start to bring her past because I thought I would try, as it was in the sale, the EFE cross country pack, and if I'm honest, it's overpriced. It is very overpriced for what it is, especially compared to for less, because I paid £168 and change for the pack of 3 coaches, which comes out to £56 a coach, which is more than the Hornby bogey coaches, and it's even more than these ones they have at the moment, Hattons have in the bargains, because these four cost £25 each for a total of £100. And then I also picked up, as I just slowly bring it around, 2 LMS ones, or XLMS ones, also in the sale, or the bargains, at £25 each. So I have 6 coaches for less than it cost for this pack of 3. Yeah, the box is nice, it's got a magnetic lid, but the Hornby coaches are slightly freer running. They couple closer, and I will sort of try and show, compared to these, how wide they sort of look, even on a third radius, of the straight, compared to Hornby X LSWR in British Rail livery, because I've only got this set in the Southern. But I'll show sort of how closer the Hornby ones are in terms of coupling. These are quieter to run than the Hornby X LSWR coaches, but that's one of the perks I can see. But the RRP for this is £224.95 for these 3 coaches. That's £74.98, or 74.983 recurring pounds for a single coach. £56 is more like it, but if I'm honest, they should be They should come to £35 a coach, because they don't have sprung buffers, which is something that the Hornby. I'm going to be using the X Collet ones for this for now, and I'm shooting on a curve, so it's not the kindest to read a set because they won't look as close as they will on the straight. But these, hopefully it's showing, but these are sprung buffers, and these are definitely metal. These feel like plastic, and they look like plastic. which is incredibly disappointing. They don't run, as said, as freely, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it means they don't run away from me on the straight while I try and set up a train, but at the same time, they're not quite so kind to the engine that's shifting them. In this case, B473, which is a fantastic version of model of the E4, which Bachmann have done recently, and I wish they would. I wish they would do more, especially in wartime black. So this engine is brilliant. The couplings are a little bit finicky, and they have a tendency to uncouple almost. I've had a breakaway from an engine once, but ultimately this centre coach, its coupling, I'm going to try and show this here, this hook is, as it normally does, on 3rd, 4th, 2nd radius curves, train set curves, it's come out of the loop on the brake behind it, and that's something which consistently happens in both directions, which is incredibly annoying. So on the I'll show on the straight, and I'll show with the Hornby LSWR coaches I have, so it's as close as possible, how much closer they are to each other compared to how these are on the straight. Because I understand I'm using the tension lock couplings, I'm using the normal couplings, but these are a little bit jarring even for me, essentially with a massive, this is essentially a massive train set. 3rd and 4th rate, it looks very noticeably further apart than it should do on the straight sections. So what I will do is I'll get those LSWR coaches out and I'll go onto a straight section so I can demonstrate a little bit better how far apart these look next to the LSWR ones. Okay, so I'm freehanding it now, so I've only got one hand to point at things. I did realise in the last bit I said how they compare to the LSWR coaches, but they're all LSWR. I meant as the Hornby ones. So these buffers very much further, because I can just about fit the end of the paintbrush between these two. I can jiggle it, and these are even slightly further apart than these are, because these are right up against each other. This one is hanging down because the engine's at the top, using a similar sized engine. And so I haven't coupled it up properly. Oops, daisy. But when pushed together, it does look, these are further apart. And again, I know I'm running standard couplings and train set curves, but it's very noticeable. It's a shame because apart from the price and the gap's so wide you could probably park a battleship in it, they are lovely coaches, but they are way too expensive for what they are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the 060 on the 062 rather on the other line, because I'm using engines of a similar size. So I'll put her on and send her up the other way, so that it can be a fairer test, even though these further apart from each other in terms of where the couplings are, and the coach is still closer than these EFE ones. Okay, and so the 062s are both at the bottom end of the station going into Tower Park. And they are. So these are now pushed right up against each other. This isn't hanging off anymore. It's closer. I can get the end in, but not very easily compared to how it was before. Just push these together. These are as far as I'll go in without couplings. It's such a big difference. These sort of coaches you can get, typically you'll pay £35 to £50 for one of these in Southern or BR guys, as they are here. These are part of the Lime Regis train pack that came with the Adams radial. These, they have a slightly nicer box because you can close it like a book and you have it on a bookshelf, almost like the Cato train set on train pack boxes. But it's just slightly disappointing. They do run a lot quieter because one of these coaches, I think it's this one, has a squeaky axle, which even with oil and graphite and I've tried grease as well, it just hasn't gone away, so I've just learned to live with it. It's limited edition, it sits in the cabinet most of the time, but it does still run. So it still runs, and then there's that squeak, whereas there isn't a squeak with them. There's a little bit of a pain, but it's not the end of the world. But if you are wanting LSWR type coaches for a southern region layout, the Hornby ones are going to be more affordable. But if you want this specific type and a specific set, then you've got no choice. Also, you have to get these ones if you want this type. I at least thought they'd have the metal buffers which felt metal. They feel like plastic. The wheels as well are solid piece. I don't know if that's prototypical, but they're not solid. The Hornby ones, I think they are. Let's have a look. Oh, they've got little holes in them. So a little pair of holes. It adds a little extra realism. But I don't know if these are prototypical with the side wheels. Completely solid. The bowie is nice, but so is the EFE bowie on an SWR coach. And then there's the Hornby one. I never thought I'd be singing the praises of Hornby quite so much, but it's definitely got more detail. I don't know if there's boards, because these are slightly different diagram coaches, so bear that in mind, but these have nothing on them in terms of extra detail. It is, as far as I can tell, all sort of moulded except for maybe this pack of springs on the bottom, but I'm not sure. They are separately fitted. You can see some sprue on the back of it. The underside's nice, but it's not even £50 nice. It just feels like a rip-off. They feel like they should be priced competitively with the Hornby Mark 1s. They have that kind of detail. There's the squeak again. That is the one issue I have with these Hornby ones, despite not being in Southern livery. I'll not put one on properly, but that's not the end of the world. So, mini rant and breakdown, but I think I should also go over some of the other new acquisitions because it's also been a month for locomotives. So what I'm going to do is, well, you can already see one and you have seen another one, as I'll go over the new engines that I picked up this month. So I've got under the layout to get into the middle, and these are the new locomotives which I picked up. Because I sold some items because I can't do my reenacting as much as I used to be able to, and travel can be a bit of a nightmare, so I sold a lot of the stuff I had, and with that money I sort of decided to treat myself to new locomotives. Some of them, for a reason, didn't like any curves, but these ones all run with no problems. And these two, the southern pair, are ones which I have now stapled on the layout, as I was wanting a B4 to replace the BT well tank as the shunter over here. It's normally in this siding, so next to the traction engine where the small prairie is. I didn't realise they'd done a new batch of them. So it randomly popped up, I think, on probably my Facebook feed when I was having a look for what was coming out on there and also my emails. And it is a brilliant little engine. It runs so much nicer than the BT well tank. It looks better, it was more affordable, and it's got the same number of driven wheels, and it's got the firebox glow inside, which took me by surprise. And it's easier to see this firebox flicker than it is the flicker in the large prairie, because the cab's more open. Let's turn the flash off and see if it's showing up. So it is in there. And it seems to run alright over my set track points. As long as the track works clean anyway, well that's the same with any little 040. It's a delightful little engine. These root discs, I think they're from West Hill Wagon Works, I think, and actually slide onto the lamp irons, and so they're easier to fit. Tiniest dab of a PVA or contactor, don't use super glue, and then just slide them in. Being a tank engine, I haven't fit on both sides because I like to run tank engines in both directions. Whereas the C-Class, this is a Bachmann X South Eastern Chatham Railway C-Class. I finally have a South Eastern Chatham Railway locomotive in Southern livery. I can stable on the layout. And a member of the class, the sole survivor, I have been on the footplate of. It's the lined green, same as a 695. It's absolutely stunning little engine. It's a shame there's no tender pickups because there's wires going into the tender But like the War Department 280, there's no pickups in there. So I'm thinking that's some digital gubbins. I think that head code is for the Bournemouth Bell, which is kind of amusing considering this is a little 2F freight engine. So as I was doing freight, these would do stopping services, particularly at the end of steamer. They would do whatever they were assigned. During wartime they would do a little bit of freight but shorter passenger trains, and they were famous for doing the hops trains down into Kent. So this engine, 1573, goes into this shed because I've had a bit of a rearrange. And so 750, Morgan Le Fay being a King Arthur, my favourite engine, is also in this shed because it's easier. As many of the engines as possible are either facing the direction of travel when they get onto the main line, or are bi-directional as possible, because it's just easier to then bring them out onto the loop and then run them. Where the Merchant Navy is an exception, that's because it doesn't fit quite into this shed. So I've got a choice, I can have 742 or I can have 21C7, and so I'd rather have 742 in the shed because I prefer the King Arthur class. But then I've also got the back end of the Q1 and a 695 in the same livery. I do need to dust her. And also if they're going to put in a crew, sort of maybe hanging out, so they're being guided in by this bloke on when to stop, so they don't smack into the buffers. I will slowly move back and go through the non-Southern engines, which I purchased because I've been wanting members of the class of these ones for a while. So what I'll do is I'll put these two away, get these three out, and then I can show them a bit closer. Okay, so for the next engines, I'm going to start with the Small Prairie. It's a really, really pretty engine. It's not butter smooth, particularly lower speed. It's a little bit loud, but it runs well enough when it's working as a scenic train or at 40 speed or higher. I think it doesn't have the proper bearings of a newer tooled engine, but it still runs. It looks like a Small Prairie. It pulls 4 coaches, which is typically what I would ask it to pull, so that's fine. The cab detail isn't painted, I don't think, though, which is a bit of a shame. Otherwise, it's a really nice little engine. I will have a running session at the end of the video with some new engines, a mix of goods and passenger workings. I'm going to take a look at this one next, which is one of my favourite types of engine of time, which is the Western Pannier tank. But I'm quite particular in that I like the inside cylinders and the tanks coming all the way to the front of the smoke box, because when they don't come all the way to the front and they sort of stop about here just behind it, they look a little bit strange. The painting on this is incredible. It doesn't have the sprung buffers, so I think it's an older tooling, although this one does, which is unusual, being an older tooling. But then it pulls what I want it to, which is typically 4 coaches, or it does look really nice with a small train of cattle wagons. There's It looks right as well. As it comes around the layout, it looks right. It looks like it belongs in sort of a countryside sort of feeling layout. It's a little bit noisier in reverse, but at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. It's absolutely stunning, little engine. I think the details come out a little bit clearer with the light on, but it's a little bit harsh and it doesn't like to focus quite so much. I do upgrade at the end of the year, so hopefully I get one with a better camera. So what I'll do now is I will take 6421 out the way and show the next engine. I like the early crest because it then matches my 56XX and my childhood 2251, which is one of my favourite engines because my first big engine as a kid. And this is the coal web tank, which is another little stunner with really nice sort of details. You don't really see the cab so easily, but the details are picked out. It's got the wooden floor effect. I think with the filler here, it has the real engine has a well tank in addition to the side tanks, much the same as an Adams radial. I've been after one of these for a while because I really like 062s and the massive chimney. It's a really nice looking engine. It's part of the train set you can pick up in a moment. It's the Station Pilot train set. It's very expensive, but given how you get I think it's four, is it three? It's three Mark 1s and the coal web tank. It's pretty good on that front, but it's called a Station Pilot train set and there's no points. So you can't station pilot your station pilot very well, can you? That's more than 250 quid normally. The engine is brilliant. A little bit dusty because one lives on a shelf, so I will have to dust her off a bit. Switch the flash off. I have to invest in a brighter light bulb for the railway run. They are really nice little runners though. One thing which I think is interesting is this is a British Rail liveried engine. It's got the number on the side of the coal bunker, but it doesn't have the front number plate on the smoke box, which feels strange. Because if I then pick up the Western engine, it's got the number plate on the front. So it's just something unusual. I don't know why it wouldn't have had one. I've had it on coal train and on passenger working the web tank, and it pulls everything alright. There weren't big engines in real life. I think there's one left. They're 2F, so they're not massive engines. Same as 64XX is a 2P, and then the C-Class is a 2F, going on with the British Rail classification, so it's not super powerful engines at the moment, but it's engines which are ones I've been after for a while. So what I'm going to do is I'll set up a little running session with some engines. and some coaches behind them. And I have the web coal tank on a coal train, and I have some other engines in the sidings, and just sort of close out the video with a running session. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you for watching. It would have been probably two shorter videos if I hadn't been quite so busy lately. So I'm not supposed to be this busy, but I am, unfortunately, at the moment, because life just has a funny way of working out that way. Right, let's set up, I think, the pannier tank and the web coal tank together and have them running, and I'll have this small prairie and a couple others satin sidings of the early crests on as well, so there's sort of a theming going on, other than the Crowswood engines, which will be obviously stabled. Right then, not sure when I'll upload the next video because I am going to see family this month now. Maybe when there's a little update, or if I've figured out how I'm going to start the N-gauge layout, but until then, I shall see you in the next one.